Sherman On. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, good afternoon, Mark. Great to chat with you today.
We are in Houston, Texas. Sherman is also in Houston, Texas, and it is a gorgeous, absolutely stunningly gorgeous day outside today. I'm so thankful that cold front came through, and yeah, I got my windows open in my house, and the air conditioning is off, which is a good thing. I don't have to support the local power company for a while. And I am Mark Stachowski, also known as MrProductivity.com. There's my website right there, MrProductivity.com. If you'd like my top 5 productivity tips, absolutely free, go check out my website, MrProductivity.com. So my guest on the LinkedIn Live today. Oh, before I introduce him, as you join. If you'd let us know if you can hear and see us, that's kind of important. And let us know where you're tuning in from. I have people from Pakistan and from South Africa and some other long, faraway countries. So let us know where you're tuning in from. So my guest on my LinkedIn Live today is a good friend of mine. We met a couple years ago via Gary Vaynerchuk. We both commented on one of his posts on, I think, Instagram, and we became friends. Then he liked it down here in Houston, so I moved down here in Houston, and I wanted to have him come on the show. So, Sherman, who are you and what do you do for a living?
All right, Mark. Thanks again for letting me come on the show. Love what you're doing here and allowing us, those that don't have LinkedIn Live, to be able to share our message. So really love what you're doing with it in a positive way and a giving way. So thank you for that. Professionally, what I do is I work with individuals that are in transition. You might know them, business development, sales, marketing individuals who want to help people. Specifically, they might have a background in finance or specifically in insurance or investments. But what we do here at Mutual of Omaha Advisors, we help coach and develop those individuals to become insurance-based financial advisors to provide what we consider kind of a more holistic look at people's overall financial situation. And so love to be able to chat with those people that are in transition. At the same time, I know that it's not for everybody. And so as people have conversations with us, just understand that it's just part of your career discovery and finding out what's going to motivate you, what's going to get you excited. And that's ultimately what we're looking for. We're looking for that right match here at our firm. And you're looking at the person then that would coach and develop you to become an insurance-based financial advisor and really tap into all that potential that you see yourself having.
Excellent. And Candy, thank you for watching from South Africa. We're glad you're here today. And if you're watching, don't be afraid to leave a comment or question in the comments. A lot of people like just watch. I know you're watching. Okay. So leave a comment and say hello. What's interesting is I remember, Sherman, many, many years ago, my parents had got me like a policy at MetLife. And I remember the guy came over to our house, and I don't know how old I was. I was like maybe 11 or 12 years old. He showed me all these numbers. I'm like, whatever, can I go out and play? I didn't care. It's like, I mean, now I care. I mean, my parents were doing their thing because they're older than me, but I think it's really important. No matter what you do, you got to have a plan for the future, because a lot of people, they go through life in a reactive mode and they go, well, next year, in 10 years, in 15 years, you may not be here. I mean, there's nothing promising us another second, minute, hour, day, week. It don't matter. But you got to set yourself up and your family up for financial success. And if you're just spending your whole paycheck all the time, or you're just going to the track and betting or whatever, that's not a good plan for the future, right?
Yeah, well, and I think one of the difficult things in this when it comes to finances, right, is that it's a very emotionally charged word, and it's a very emotional and anxiety driven kind of situation, right? So for a lot of people, like you just mentioned right there, your parents were doing some different things. They wanted to bring you in on it. And again, you're 10, 11, you don't need to have the full understanding of financial planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what they were teaching you right there was there's value in planning.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't get that. And I know you and I've had conversations about some wonderful programs that are offered. I think of like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, some of these great people out there, Jim Cramer on the investing side. And so they're giving out some general advice, and it's helpful. But the average person doesn't actually sit down with someone and just say, what does this temperature look like? What is just like if you and I are, we have our own physical health. If we don't ever sit down with the doctor, then we won't know if we have high blood pressure.
Yep.
We don't know if we're pre-diabetic. We might know from a symptomatic perspective, like, oh, my back hurts, but we might not know exactly what's causing that ailment. And so a lot of times we kind of sit here in our chair, and whether it's via Zoom or face-to-face, and we have that time to be able to check in with people and to say, If your money is a tool, how's it working? And ultimately, where do you want to go? And the struggle for a lot of people, to your point, Mark, is they don't have dreams. And so my kind of tagline is let's put reality to your financial dreams. And for some people, it's just trudging through.
Mm.
Sherm, I just got laid off from, name the company right now. And my wife and I, we just got to make it last for 6 months. That is our focus right now. And I would say, good. Then let's have a conversation after those 6 months, when right now it's too tight to even have a conversation beyond just making ends meet. And then what I find for a lot of people is a common phrase in our industry is to pay yourself first.
Mm.
Because what we find with most people is they always spend all their paycheck, no matter how big
Yep.
their revenue gets. If they don't set money aside for themselves in the future, they'll spend what's left. And so if they kind of have either a 70, 20, 10 approach, hey, I'm going to live on 70%, pay off debt with 20%, save 10%, or it's 80, 20, where it's, hey, I'm living on 80%, I'm giving 10 to tithing, 10% to savings. Whatever that formula looks like for each person, they need to find out what's important to them. And so when we kind of have those conversations with people, Mark, it helps them really just take that figurative step back and go, okay, where do I see myself financially, and what am I doing today? And so there's almost always is a gap,
Mm-hmm.
and we help them bridge those gaps.
I love that because I have this analogy I tell people, which is if you don't listen to the whole thing I'm going to say, you're going to think I'm some kind of psychotic person. If I went up to people and with a loaded gun and put it in their head and said, "Tell me your dreams," I'd probably be killing a lot of people, which I find is sad because they're like, "Well, I hope I make it to Friday, or I hope I make it to the end of the day." I'm like, "No, that's not a dream." Okay, that's not a dream. And I think Jim Collins wrote and Built to Last, a big bestseller in the 80s or 90s, whatever year it came out, about having big, hairy, audacious goals. We need to have big goals because when we have big goals, they pull us toward the future. But if your goal is to make it to the end of the day, well, what are you gonna do tomorrow? Hope to make it to the end of the day, or maybe your goal is gonna be lunchtime. And I really want to encourage people to dream big. I believe you should have a dream that is so scary that there's no way you could do it right now. And that's going to give you encouragement to work every day and to grow toward that goal. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think when people are able to just put down the BHAG, right? The big,
Yeah.
hairy, audacious goal,
Yep.
when they're able to put that down on paper, then they can start maybe doing the backward math to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like, so for example, one of the biggest ones that parents are dealing with right now is putting children into college. College has
Yeah.
become an excessive cost from that perspective. And so if they have a desire to be able to help that child go through college, they need to have a look at, well, what are we doing right now with our resources to be able to really move towards that direction? And I think for a lot of parents, it becomes such an audacious goal to help these three children get into college that might they might sacrifice their own lifestyle now, their own retirement in the future, just to be able to get there. And so they end up making a rash decision and not the best decision given on their current circumstances. And I would say for every single parent that's listening, your children are at all variety of different ages. And so the answer is not a one size fits all.
100%. And when I used to be in my church's youth group ministry, kids would say, "Well, I'm gonna go to college." I'm like, "Why?" And they look at me like, "What do you mean why?" I'm like, "Well, what are your plans? What do you want to do?" Because you don't go to college to find out what you want to do with life. You
Mhm.
figure out a general idea, then you make a plan. If you want to be an app developer, you don't have to go to college. You can learn that on your own. If you want to be a coder, you can learn that on your own. So you don't necessarily have to go to college. I mean, obviously, I want my doctor to go to college. I want my lawyer to go to college. But I think a lot of people need to go read Simon Sinek's book, the why.
Start with why.
Start with why. You got to find out what your why is, whether it's your career, whether it's investing, whether it's going to college. You need to understand your why. And a lot of people, Sherman, they don't know their why. They don't, and I think they need to start there.
Yeah, I think a lot of times what we end up doing is we get so focused on getting people to that next level, right? And
Mhm.
so people, the phrase that I commonly use when I sit down with people is, are you living your life in default, or have you decided to make choices for yourself?
Ah.
And so, now, because we have a lot of technology, we understand that phrase, right? When I open this phone right out of the box, it's going to be in default mode. In other words, the
Mhm.
ringer's already going to be set, the notifications are already going to be set. There's going to be certain apps already pre-installed. The question is, do you want that stuff?
Mhm.
Do you want that sounds? Do you want those notifications? And I know you're big on productivity, so the less notifications that you have, the better.
Mhm.
So that way you're focused on getting the tasks done that you need to. And I think for a lot of people, because they live their life in default mode, they don't actually take the time to think about what's best for them or what they should be doing. And understand as well, Mark, just because you decide to do something doesn't mean you have to do it forever.
Mm.
If you decided even to become a neurosurgeon, right? You put in 12 years beyond high school. You're now 34, your first time actually full-fledged neurosurgeon doctor, your own patient. And you realize after 5 years, I actually want to be a psychiatrist. I actually want to be a comedian, right? So one of our great comedians right now, that's exactly what he did. And so that's kind of where we look at certain things. That's Ken Jeong, right? From
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yep.
and so he was a full-fledged right-on doctor, and here he is doing stand-up on the weekends. And that's where I think people, we don't say he was a failure because he left medicine.
Mm.
We go, yeah, he chose to pursue himself. But the funny thing about it is sometimes in our own mind, Mark, we think that's what other people think of us.
Yes.
And so that's the other thing. Either people are living in default mode, or number two is they have your hopes as their dreams. So
Yes.
Mark, you say, hey, I want to have a Porsche, I want a 5-car, 4-bath house in maybe Katie, and then I go, that sounds good. When do you want that by, Mark? Mark says, hey, I want that by the time I'm 35. Okay, I want Mark's goals as my goals. And all of a sudden, I put this anxiety, these expectations on myself
Mm.
with the timeline, and they have no real value to me because they're not mine. They're my parents, they're my grandparents, they're Mark, my buddy down the road. Or
Yep.
even worse, there's some nobody on a social media like that said that I should do this.
Yep.
And they're in a different country, they're in a different state, right? I do not want to live in California. So I don't really care what anybody does in California.
Yeah, and it's funny when you shared that story. Our dentist actually went through mechanical engineering school, graduated honors. Then he said, "You know what? I want to be a dentist." And he went back because he was young. And like our mutual person we like online is Gary Vaynerchuk. He says, "And you're still sucking breath. You can change your mind." There are
Yes.
Kentucky Fried Chicken. Colonel Sanders didn't fry his first chicken until 69. So if you're still breathing, you can still get around. Don't look at, like you said, a failure. Say, look, I tried this, it didn't work. Let me try something else. And I think that's the beauty of life. You could try different things. And I encourage people to do that. I mean, if you don't know what you want to do, and Napoleon Hill writes in Think and Grow Rich, most people don't know what they want to do until they're 50 or 60. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's okay. If I didn't find out what I wanted to do until I got fired from my job in 2005. And I was wandering around the Atlantic Ocean in a canoe that was leaking water with no oars. And I finally found what I was supposed to do. It's okay. Okay. You do what you got to do to pay the bills and get food in your stomach, but it's okay. And I think that's part of the beauty of life, is to try new things. There's some cultures where you grow up and you do a certain thing and you marry a certain person. I don't like that. I want to make choices, and sometimes my choices don't work out well, but that's okay.
You bring up a really interesting thing. There's a phenomenal book out there called The Immigrant Edge. And so what happens is immigrants come from a country like, let's say, India, where there is maybe a prearranged marriage. Maybe there's a way that you should be living your life. And they come here to the United States, and it still is the land of opportunity. But what a lot of immigrants are amazed at is how many Americans don't see the opportunity. How many Americans are living their life this paying the bills, living it by default, just doing why are you going to college? I don't know. It's what we do. Why? There's no point for me to send you to college. Told my sons, my wife and I told my sons this 2 weeks ago. There's no point for us to send you to college if you do not know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Go work. I don't care where you work, but you will find out whether you like to do it or not. I painted for a day, Mark. That job sucked. Guess what? I don't paint today. I did landscaping for a day. Guess what? I realized I don't want to do that job either. And I don't landscape, right? And so I worked at, I worked as a busboy, as a teen. Guess what? I knew I didn't want to do that for a career either, right? And so that doesn't mean that I was a failure as a busboy. I was an amazing busboy. I was amazing at washing dishes. But guess what? I didn't want to do that for my life. And so other people look at that and they go, love the restaurant business, would love to be able to be, behind the grill and cooking and serving people. Guess what? That's their passion. Go ahead and do it. I do not envy Gordon Ramsay's life or name the chef, right? That's not what I want to do. And so I think when we have an opportunity to really look at our lives and say, this is what I want, we start moving ourselves in action towards those things. But when we live our lives just going check to check, paying the bills, doing whatever is necessary to stay alive, then we end up doing things we don't want to do. And the only person that we have to blame, and I know this is going to suck for a lot of people listening, is the only person you have to blame is yourself.
Yep.
And I know someone's going to look in the mirror and go, no, somebody else made that decision. No, nobody told you to go wake up and go to HP every day. Well, I have to go to, there's no have to.
Yeah.
You chose every day to go to HP, right? Or name the company, right? To be an engineer.
100%. And was something similar that my wife and I decided to do this year for Christmas. And it's going to be similar is every year. It's just my wife and I at home. Okay. And I'm like, why are we buying each other Christmas presents every year? And we're spending our joint money. And we're like, let's do something different. So we decided as a couple to do something different. So we decided instead of buying Christmas presents, we're going to join a local gun club and we're going to learn how to shoot a handgun together. Every week we're going to go to a gun range and we're going to learn how to shoot a handgun. Now,
so
some people,
you went last week, first time, right?
Yeah, first time last week. And I never shot a gun before. It scared the crap out of me. Now things are, did you see my video? Oh my goodness. Let me tell you, these people on TV make it look so easy.
They do.
And I asked the girl who's training us, I'm like, hey, can I do one-handed? She goes, oh, honey, you're not going to want, because everybody calls honey here, and all the women call guys honey in Texas. They go, oh, honey, you're not going to want to do that. And first time, man, I'm like, holy cow. But you know what? The back to the choice thing is we decided, instead of going out and, what am I going to buy her? A t-shirt, a sweater. I said, let's do something together. Now, what does this got to do with Sherman's talking about? We made a decision. Instead of going out and spend $500-$600 on presents, which we're not going to use half the time anyways, let's do something that's going to grow our relationship that we can learn together. And that way there's nothing under the tree, because the tradition has always been there's a lot of presents under the tree. That's the tradition. And we're like, why are we? And we started questioning ourselves. Why are we doing this? We grew up this way, but this is our marriage. This is our family. Let's do it our own way. And so we're going to do something different this year. And you know what? My stress is already reduced like 90% for the holidays, because I know we don't have to buy each other anything, which is great.
Yeah. I think a lot of times when we look for meaning versus reward, that's what we ultimately want, right? So you mentioned what's the purpose of the gift? The gift was, hey, I'm thinking about you. I want to spend some time with you. You're important to me. Well, why not do that together right now?
Yeah.
Why are we waiting for a calendar day that was propagated by someone, right? Whoever decided it, right? Pagans. I don't know how to blame an entire, culture of people, but ultimately the people that put together this calendar said that they were going to do it on this day.
Yep.
Well, I want to celebrate Valentine's Day every day in the house, right? It doesn't mean I have to go get flowers every day, but it means that I'm going to think about why I love my significant other to this degree. Why do I decide to come home every day? Why does she decide to put up with my crap every day? Those are the important things for us to just think about. And I think I love that, Mark, because when we're truly introspective of the decisions that we're making, we decide to remove up some of those traditions. And what it reminds me of, you might be familiar with this story, is this woman, she's teaching her daughter how to make a roast. And so she's cutting off the ends of the roast.
Oh, yeah. I tell the story all the time.
And the granddaughter goes, why are you doing that? And I don't know, but let's ask Grandma. Grandma's the one that taught me. So they make the phone call, and lo and behold, what does Grandma say, Mark?
I don't know why you're doing it, but my pan was too small. I love that story.
So the daughter never questioned why mom cut the ends off, but just did it, and then was teaching it to her daughter. So if the granddaughter never questioned that, she'd be cutting off the ends as well. And so I think a lot of times we do that in our own lives because, well, that's what my parents did.
Yep.
Well, break that cycle. So, and we see that, Mark, with like some negative things that we might do. Like, so for example, if like a grandparent suffered with alcoholism, then the children don't, or you know what I mean? Like we can see the breaking of cycles in a negative way.
Yes.
But even those things that aren't necessarily negative, like let's say you and I were like, well, we didn't grow up on social media. I'm not a marketing person. I'm not a
Yeah.
podcaster. I'm not in business development. We give ourselves these labels of what we don't do or who we aren't, and so we say, nope, I'm not that kind of person.
Yeah.
But why?
Hmm. What's interesting is, going along what you said, is I really cringe when people say, yeah, I'm going to make the change on January 1st. I'm like, it's September 28th. Why not make it now?
Mhm.
I remember when I went vegetarian last November, I remember telling my wife right after the week before Thanksgiving, I said, I'm going vegetarian. She goes, what? I'm like, she goes, why? I'm like, I said, January 1st, I'm going to go vegetarian. I said, no, I'm going to start today. She goes, but Thanksgiving's coming up. So I had turkey on Thanksgiving, and then I had ham on Christmas, and I had like meat lasagna 2 days after Thanksgiving, after Christmas, and I've been vegetarian. But I didn't wait till January 1st. And everybody says, well, it's September. I'll change in the new year. I'm like, well, change today. To your point, change today. You don't have to wait to January 1st or February 14th or July 4th. You could change today. You could change this moment. If you want to make a change, let's say you don't read a book, but you say, I'm going to start reading 52 books a year. Well, start reading today. Don't wait till January 1st. Start reading today. And I agree with you 100% on that.
Well, it's interesting, Mark, to use your life as an example. How hard was it to run over 1,100 some odd days ago?
Well, the beginning was kind of easy. The first 2 weeks was kind of easy. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'm running every day. And then I reached that point because they said you got to get to 30 days. So about between 50 days, 15 and 29, it's like, okay, am I going to really do this every day? And then once I hit day 30, now I'm like, I cannot ever imagine not running. But there's that 2-week period that I'm like, am I nuts? And now 1,127 days later, I'm so thankful I run every single day. I feel healthier. I feel younger.
And the funny thing is, like, so let's say you broke that cycle. So you just didn't go to tomorrow. Just like, hey, I don't want to go. But guess what you can do then the following day?
Start over at day number 1.
And so the funny thing though about it is, in reality, if you look at the kind of the circumstances of it, it could just be one day lost, but 1,100 some odd days to the left and 1,100 some odd days to the right.
Yeah.
Because you and I can't predict that future. And so just phenomenal when you start looking at people's habits. So there's a great quote I just shared with my team this morning was, successful people will build habits in what failures will not want to do. And so you think about that. Look, successful people, let's say in business development, marketing, sales, they're going to make those phone calls. They're going to go to those networking events. They're going to ask for the business. Failures won't make the phone calls, or they won't make enough of them. Failures won't ask for the business. They're afraid to get the no. And so what successful people, they don't necessarily enjoy making the phone calls. They don't necessarily enjoy sending all those DMs and doing all the marketing or go to networking, but they do it because they know that that's what's going to get them there. That's really where our habits on what we're doing on a daily basis, right? So if you were to not run one day, do you break your habit? Not at all. But because
I would be very sad.
You'll be sad because that you've been working so hard to keep this streak going, but you already have the habit of building it. A habit starts building it when you do it 2 days.
Yep.
So now Mark doesn't run for 2 days in a row. Now 3 days, now 4 days. Now he's starting to build a habit in the negative way, but still he's got 1,100 some odd days behind him. You still have a habit of running.
Yeah.
And that's the powerful thing, I think, for a lot of people is, to your point, hey, I'm a vegetarian, but I want to have Thanksgiving turkey. Well, nobody said, there's no book out here that says Mark can't ever eat meat in the day of his life.
Yes.
Right, like who's saying that? The vegetarian police? Like, give it a rest.
Vegetarian police,
right?
What's interesting is, you made me remind me of recently. I launched a brand new program called the digital productivity coaching program, which is all done on your phone now. And the reason why that came up is we have this thing called COVID. I don't know if you've heard of COVID or not. A lot of my clients lost their jobs, and they have to take care of the families. They got to put a roof over their head. They got to feed the family. They got to take care of that. And then I was in, virtual school and stuff like that. So I said, how can I serve my clients at a more affordable rate? Of course, you don't get direct access to me. And I thought about it, and I talked to some people, and someone gave me the idea of this digital productivity coaching, which is all done on the line. It's a lot cheaper, but I did that because I'm not like, well, I'm losing business, people losing their jobs, this COVID, I'm going to curl up in the ball and suck my thumb. I said, well, how can I serve my clients? And that's how it came to birth. And if you look back at history, a lot of the companies came up during recessions, during bad times. Someone had an idea. They don't go, well, the marketplace isn't really good right now, or, there's a recession going on now. I think like Airbnb came up, Uber came up during the recession. No one they didn't sit there and go, well, I got a great idea, but it's not the great time. They just launched it anyways. And I think people have got to stop looking at what's going on out there. And matter of fact, I'm rereading the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I know you're a fan of the book. And he says, look, there's things you can control and there's things you can't control. Well, why are you worrying about the things you can't control? Worry about the things you can control. And so I just decided to launch this new program. And I know a lot of people are doing very well right now. I know people are doing better now than before COVID because they went all in and say, I'm going to try to figure out a way to help people and make some money at it. They didn't give up. And I see a lot of people doing that. But I also, sadly, Sherman, see a lot of people binge watching Netflix, and they're watching the news all day. They're staying up all hours of the night, sleeping all day. And what's going to happen when this thing ends, they're going to be sit there with, when the tide goes out, they're going to be naked because they haven't been working where everybody else is, like you and me, have been working and hustling.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times we have a tendency to really evaluate what we might be taking in nutrition wise.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't do the same thing with what we put into our mind and what we see with our
Yep.
eyes. And for a lot of people, that doesn't mean I'm not saying that everybody needs to, not read the news, not go to CNN.com or their trusted news. But I would say is balance it out with something that's helpful, that's
Yes.
productive, that's going to move their life in a positive way. Because Mark, if you and I were to watch CNN.com an entire day, it would be depressing. It'd be all about COVID-19
Yep.
and all the horrible cases. But COVID-19 isn't. It's a fatal killer, but it's not a death sentence because there's millions of survivors that have gotten COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't want to diminish those that have passed away and left, an emptiness in people's lives. It's just that if I were to test positive for COVID-19, it's not like getting stage 5 cancer and the doctor's saying, "Hey, Sherm, you better make your final arrangements because you got 6 months to live."
Right.
COVID-19 at my age with my background of health, there's no HIPAA here, but I'm healthy, no medications. They would more likely not just say, "Hey, self-quarantine for 14 days and wear a mask and keep six feet away from people," and they'd be more concerned about me spreading it, not the concern about me dying. And so I think for a lot of people, to your point of binge watching whatever it is, Netflix, YouTube TV, we have so many things that we can watch, right? Plus
Yep.
you got all the thousands of channels if you have direct TV or some kind of a
Yep.
special cable program or package. And then, of course, we have live sports coming back as well, which is, again, another way that people can kind of
Yep.
lose themselves. And so if we lose ourselves too much in all this stuff that leaves us with complete little value, it's like eating low caloric foods, hoping to get full or to actually be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You and I could eat chips, and nutrition-wise, we might be able to get in the 2,000 calories we need for the day. But I know that Doritos in 2 weeks would probably end up killing us.
Yeah.
We would still
Exactly.
be full, though. We would have got the thousands of
Yep.
calories that we needed each day, but we would have not had enough substance. That's what it is. It's
Yep.
the analogy of the deer that in the midst of this famine, they were fed hay. So they were full, but they ended up dying of starvation because they didn't have anything of nutritional value.
Mm. That is so powerful. Well, let me tell everybody about your website, ron.incomeforlifemodel.com. That's your website, and they can go there. What are we going to find out when we go there?
So the big thing here, Mark, that I wanted to share with people is how in a life where you and I, we're on the accumulation side. So we're saving money for this eventual retirement, this big picture in the end. And how do I know with good surety that my money's going to live long enough? Because people right now, if let's say they work from 25 to 65, that's 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then right now, a lot of people are living from 65 to 90. That's 35 years. So I'm almost working as long as I'm retiring.
Mm.
And that becomes a very scary picture for a lot of people to go from all this safety net of money going, I got to distribute it with income. And so that's exactly what that website does. Is it helps. There's some calculators on there. If people want to go through it, of course, they can reach out to me via the contact methods there. But it helps be able to put at ease this concern that a lot of people have when it comes to hitting that elusive number of retirement, 65, 70, 75, 80, and making sure that it lives as long as they want to.
I love that. And, in my Bible study class, my wife and I, we're both 55 and we're the youngest members of the class. And a lot of people are like 63 to 68 in your target market. And they'll say, well, what are you going to do about retirement? I'm like, why would I want to retire from what I'm doing? They're like, well, don't you just want to just if you want to shoot around a golf or something like that, so I could do that now and still be an entrepreneur. I said, so you don't have to retire. And they like, not retire. I'm like, yeah, you work at a job. And so you're accruing, vacation time. And I don't want to retire. And I love what I do. Now, I may retire someday, but my goal is triple digits. And I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing. Zig Ziglar didn't stop until he died at 85. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to retire. I mean, you could take your foot off the gas pedal if you want to. But when people who are used to working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then retiring at 65 and then living for a while and dying, I never liked that. So I'm in a position now as an entrepreneur. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk, I can't imagine Gary ever retiring. I just can't. I don't think Gary would ever retire. I think he would ease off the pedal, but I don't think he'd ever completely stop. And that's just my thought. Now, if you want to retire, I'm like, then go mazel tov, retire. I mean, but I think to each his own. You agree?
To each his own, absolutely. Oh, it's almost silly to think about retiring when you're the smartest, the most well-connected, the longer you live. There's a reason why Warren Buffett continues to work.
Yes.
It's not because he needs the money. It's not because he needs the recognition. He doesn't need the accolades. He does not need something to do.
Yep.
But he is the smartest at what he's doing in his industry. Mm-hmm. I think about Bill Gates and what he's doing at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and trying to solve some of the most complex problems of like clean water, because it's not just clean water, it's clean sanitation. And so it's amazing that you take all that intelligence, all those connections, and I'm going to hang it up. I'm going to sit back in the Barker Lounger and, do the crossword. I think to your point, Mark, most people, if they find out what they wanted to do, they would only retire because their physical health made them. Now, you and I, we're not punching out steel. This isn't the Carnegie days or the Henry Ford days where we're doing back-breaking work.
Yes.
So when you're able to do something like this, think about if you run this podcast like you are and the live sessions, and you do that just for 5 more years. How many people know Mark and what he does? And then now fast forward that in a decade, fast forward that in another decade. Why would you stop?
Yeah.
People at that point would love to hear what you have to say.
I love it. So before we wrap up, I want to thank Sherman for being on the show, but 2 favors I want to ask you who are watching this, either live or on a replay, including Sherman. As soon as this ends, go like, comment, and share this live feed. Why? That tells LinkedIn, hey, let's show this to more people, because I really want people to see Sherman's message, because it was really on point. So when you like, comment, and share, that tells LinkedIn, hey, this is important, share it. Now, the other thing I want you to do is go to my website, mrproductivity.com. There you can get my top 5 productivity tips, and you can find out information about my brand new digital productivity coaching program. It's affordable coaching. It's all done on your phone, and who doesn't take their phone with them? So go to Mr. Productivity and find that out. So Sherman, thank you so much for being on the podcast. No, it's not my podcast. On LinkedIn Live. I got two things going here. I got kind of confused. I really appreciate you joining us today. I'm so glad that I can count you as a friend. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and 2020, and that you have an awesome 2021.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Thanks for letting me be on the guest on LinkedIn Live.